All right, well, we couldn't do a whole show on climate care and not get outside in the elements. We are here on a beautiful day in Bayfront Park in Hamilton, and we're about to speak to the CEO of A Rocha. It is an amazing international Christian organization that focuses on scientific research, environmental education, and community-based projects. His name is Luke Wilson. Let's go visit him now. Thanks so much for joining us today, Luke. Tell me a little bit about A Rocha and what makes it such a great organization for reminding us of how important it is to care for our climate.
It's this beautiful expression of God's love for His creation, and we see people engaging this in a new way, just because of what's happening around the world. With different issues, whether it's climate change or biodiversity loss or farming and agriculture and the impacts that's having on the world. People are awakening to the need to love God's creation in a new way.
We throughout the whole show have been talking to our correspondents in Israel and in Italy about how they are seeing things change within their respective countries and areas when it comes to the environment. What are you hearing and seeing about maybe changes that are happening here close to home that Canadians need to be made aware of?
I think we're seeing the migration to cities, and I think there's a lot of value to that. But one of the things that you start to ask yourself is, how do you care for the city well and the ecology around a city? In Ontario in recent months, we've seen some major changes in the green belt and conversation around policy with our green belt. There's a number of issues between urban and rural, and how do you balance population needs in a city and the need for the beauty of the land and what comes out of the land? I think that's a real question for us in this context, where we live around one of the largest bodies of water in the world, and in some ways we're not as connected to the global changes in water issues that are happening. And so I think finding ways to connect with that narrative around our place and watersheds and the lake and the urban and city engagement, I think that's one of the places you can start to understand the changing ecological narrative. It is hard to place yourself in the climate change narrative. It feels big and broad, and especially in southern Ontario, we don't always see the impacts that the rest of the world is facing, whether it's mass migration because of different water issues or food issues. And so I think placing ourselves around water and the question of water is an access point to ecological questions and issues.
As I started off, there are so many things that are occupying our minds right now, but so important to be able to keep our minds focused on our environment, because if we don't take care of our world, who is, right? And this is what we have to live with. But for some, that's hard. I think it's hard to reconcile faith and why we should care about our environment and just everything else that's battling for our attention. So how would you connect those two when it comes to God and creation?
There is so much in the Bible that helps us understand why it's on mission. It's part of the gospel to participate in creation care. It's not supplementary or sort of this maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. It's actually core to what it means to be a Christian. So we take Psalm 24 as our inspiration. The earth is the Lord's. That simple phrase kind of shifts your understanding and helps you go, oh, this isn't about me, this is about God and His world, and His story for His world. And so it takes some time for people to place themselves in that story, but it's one that A Rocha is committed to, and we see people waking up to that reality And our mission and our posture and our action comes out of that story, not one where we're responsible for making things right. Like so many feel that burden and that weight. And just to take it a little further, we're not saying that we're ignoring, all the pain and all the hurt and all the woundedness across creation. That's there and that's real. So it's not a blind optimism that we have, but I think it's a hope that that both makes room for the grief of what's going on in the world, but also trusts and believes that God's still working in all creation.
So good. Thank you so much, Luke, for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Maggie.
Yeah.